in this section of the course, we'll be talking about formwork and reinforcement. Now, formwork, for you to understand formwork, you're an absolute beginner, you've never done concrete before, I would explain. Now, concrete, when it's fluid or when it's mixed, acts like water. It takes the form of any shape it finds itself or any shape you pour it in. So if you find a circular form to pour your concrete, you have a circular concrete by the time it cures. Now, in doing stamped concrete, we want to make sure that we have a form to cover the area we want to work in a square pattern, because stamped concrete or concrete should be poured in a form that is in the manner you want it to show forth. Let's say, for example, I want to pour a circular garden patio now. I need to get a formwork done. For pouring a circular garden patio or an outdoor area that is just circular, like a big circle, I need to put a big circle form and then pour the concrete inside. It hardens and becomes a circular concrete. If I want a square concrete, I need to put a form that is square in shape, and then I pour the concrete inside, and you have a square concrete, because I will take out my form at the end of the day. Now, concrete, when it's freshly mixed, takes the form of water. When it cures and hardens, it becomes a permanent feature. So what we are trying to do with the formwork is to create a form we want our concrete to assume, be it a circular form, a square form, a trapezoidal form, a rectangular form, a triangular form, whatever form we want the concrete or the stamped concrete to assume at the end of the day. That's the shape of the formwork we'll be placing on our floors. Now, to do your formwork, there are various materials you can use. You can use wood, and I prefer using the wood when I'm doing circular forms, like use a plywood, because a plywood can be bent to form a perfect circle. Yes, so a wood is better when you're doing circular forms or irregular shaped forms. A plywood along with some off-cut wood. You can get a carpenter to register or to actually do your forms for you when you are using wood. Now, for you that is not a professional, like a carpenter like this, or you don't want to go through the rigors of hiring a carpenter on your project, well, you are left with no choice but to use a rectangular formwork. Rectangular formwork are easy to do. They can be done by a novice, they can be done by anybody, and which is what I'll be showing you how to do. Now, to do a rectangular formwork, you need what we call a square pipe. The square pipe looks like this. That's what a square pipe looks like. And you place the square pipe on your work area in the form that you want it to take. You want your concrete to take. You can place the square pipe. Usually you need at least a minimum of about 5 to 6 pieces of square pipe, because you need to be able to form a square on your work area before you start pouring your concrete. So you need 4 pieces of square pipe to form a square. You can reuse them actually. So you don't need to buy a square that will cover, or a square pipe that will cover the entire work area. You can use that and when you finish casting it, the day's job is done. Then the very next day you come to work, you losing out the form, transfer it to somewhere else like that, because the square pipes are durables, they are reusable. In some parts of Nigeria and Africa, they call them range, they call them square pipe, but this is what it looks like. You can get them in any metal store, anywhere they sell metals around you, square iron rods and the rest. You can get square pipes or metal square pipes to buy. Now, those are the 2 types of forms you can use, either wood or the square pipes that I am familiar with for now. Now, where you're using the square pipe, once you place your form, you must understand that concrete has a very funny behavior, which is when it's in the form, it always tries to escape. It always tries to leave the form you have prepared for it. An example of wooden forms using is like this. That's a wooden form. You see, you see them all around in construction. And this is a square form. That's what a square form looks like. A square form. Now you see they placed pegs to hold the form in place. The reason is because concrete has that funny nature of trying to escape. It always tries to leave any area you place it. So once you place it in a form, it's going to try to leave that form. It's to start pushing the form out. If you have your pegs or a driven stake, you drive stakes into the ground to hold your forms in place, or where a carpenter does the form, he can use a nail and stakes at the back to hold the form in place and make sure that the form doesn't shift even when the force of the concrete is trying to act and push the form and escape, the form stays in place. So that's what the formwork does in stamped concrete, holds the concrete in place. You can use a square pipe, you can use the wood. To use a wood, you need a carpenter to actually place it properly. It's a lot more expensive because then you have to pay for the labor of the carpenter, you have to buy the materials or the wooden materials. But to make it a little bit easy for you, I've just suggested that you can use the square pipe as your form. A square pipe can be done by a layman. All you need to do is to place the square pipe on your floor the way he's doing, drive a stake into the ground to hold it in place, and then use your square, make sure it's square, then begin your pour. You conclude your work for that day, you close it, you leave it. The next day you come, you remove or you take out the forms you used the day before, move them to another side of the work area, continue your pour. You do that in bits and bits and bits and like that, and you continue till you cover your entire work area. That's what using the formwork entails. Now, when it comes to reinforcement, for some areas where you're going to be having heavy-duty trucks, heavyweight equipment to drive upon, it is important you reinforce your concrete. Now, let me explain what reinforcement does for a concrete. In areas where you have unstable soil or the earthwork is unstable, you have what we call differential settlements. If you see some houses after a few years of construction or just completed it, you see some cracks on the wall. It seems like the houses are cracking and all that. These things usually caused a little by what we call earth movement or differential settlements. Now, when you freshly fill an area or earth is moved in an area, even though earth is not moved, most times we find out that the earth settles differently depending on the stress on the surface and the internal workings deep below. Earth settles. Now, when earth settles and you have placed a concrete over the earth and it settles, let's say this is the concrete you placed, the earth beneath it, they are together upon your pouring and it settles. What you happen, you have air pockets in between the floor of the settled earth and the stamped concrete or the concrete you placed. So there's going to be an air pocket or a void. For a reinforced concrete, that's little to no problem. It's similar to what you do on your decking slabs. The reinforced concrete means concrete that carries iron rod. Concrete has a very great compressive strength. What it means is that you cannot compress concrete to destruction, but concrete has a very low shear strength. What it means that it's easy to break a concrete that is not reinforced. So the reinforcement serves as a buffer to increase the shear strength, that is to make the concrete unbreakable. You can't compress concrete easily, but you can break concrete easily. So you see all those plenty cartoons where you have someone put a concrete slab over an empty point and uses his hand and hits it and it gets broken. Yes, concrete breaks easily. The moment there's a void beneath a concrete, a little stress or a little effort on it will break it in pieces. So there's nothing magical about those things you see on YouTube. Now back to the class. Now, when it comes to doing stamped concrete, you want to make sure that for areas where you have heavy duty vehicles, heavy duty equipment, you place reinforcements in it. You could use iron rods, what we call rebars, to do your reinforcements. Get an iron bender, have him do rebars in your reinforcement in your floor, and you can use the BRC wire mesh. This is what the BRC wire mesh looks like. All you need to do is to open it, spread it on the floor, and begin to cast your concrete upon. The same thing with reinforcement. Your iron bender or the iron worker comes on site, places the reinforcement, ties them together, then you begin to pour your concrete inside. So the reinforcement is like a buffer to ensure that even though there's a void underneath your stamped concrete work, tomorrow, 10 years, 5 years from that day, someone steps on it or someone drives on it with heavy pressure vehicle or trucks, the reinforced concrete makes it such that the concrete doesn't break and then there's a pothole, or it doesn't crack and then it defaces your entire work. So it gives added strength to your floors when you add reinforcement. So as much as you can, do well to add reinforcement, except in situations where the client tells you or your patron tells you he doesn't need no reinforcement, maybe to control cost and the rest, it's fine. If maybe I'm working in an area where there's just going to be foot traffic, where people are just going to walk on like that, I wouldn't need to add reinforcement to such areas because it's just a garden path and people are just going to walk on it. There's no heavy duty truck coming. There's a waste of money to add reinforcement, except I want to just have that extra strength in it. So that's it about formwork and reinforcement. Now, when it comes to, finally, before we go on this lesson, when it comes to reinforcing your concrete, you want to make sure that all of your reinforcement sits in between the concrete. I get to sites and I see some very funny practices in some areas where the concrete, the reinforcement is laid like a mat on the floor, like this. It's just laid on the floor like a mat. There is no room between the reinforcement, the rebar, the BRC, and the earthwork. That's just a waste of material. That reinforcement is as good as useless in such a situation. The purpose of a reinforcement is that it should be in between your concrete. Let's say this is your concrete now. The reinforcement should be in between your concrete, just laid in between it. So you have concrete, ironwork, and concrete. More like a sandwich, or as you would have it, a bread and butter sandwich. You have your bread now in this case is your concrete. You have your butter or your egg or whatever it is, your toppings. That egg or that thing in the middle should be your rebar, your reinforcement, your BRC, your wire mesh, and then you have concrete on top again. Do you get? You don't put your egg under, then put the concrete, or you don't put the iron under, put the concrete, and then feel you have done a good job. No, you haven't. You just messed up and you just actually wasted that reinforcement. It's having no purpose at all. The reinforcement should be in between your concrete. I can't stress this enough. Now, to make it easy for you, you can get pieces of broken blocks, what we call biscuits in construction. I don't want to use too much of construction terms in this course because I know that there are people that are just wanting to get into this field. They're not interested in too much terminologies and words that would throw them off balance. So I'm just going to be going to explain in layman's terms. Now, what we refer to as biscuits in constructions are actually cubes of concrete that we use to suspend the rebars or the BRC. You place them on the earth and place the rebars upon them such that the rebars now will now be suspended. You have like a 2-inch or a 1-inch clearance. Usually biscuits are like 1.5 inches in thickness. So you have like a 1-inch clearance so that when you pour your concrete can go underneath the rebars, sip there, and actually be there. So you have sufficient concrete cover over your reinforcements and over your ironwork or your BRC or whichever one you're using for that job or for that project. So that's it on formwork and reinforcement, and I'll see you in the next section of the course where we'll be talking about concrete mixing and spreading. Thank you and bye-bye for now. FDM Learn once again. Bye-bye.